It's episode 329 of The Platformers, a show about games and nerd culture, and I am your host with the very burnt mouth, Brian Barnett.
I am the vampire hunter, Kris Cornelisse.
I'm trapped on a ship in the middle of deep space and questioning my life. I'm Oberger.
All right. For everybody
It's a bit
new,
like that, isn't it?
because I know there's been a mass exodus of Twitter to Blue Sky. There may be some people who are joining us now from there. Welcome. This is a usually weekly show with absurdity and nerd culture critiques, commentary, bunch of stuff like that. Usually revolving around video games, but we also cover books and films and television and all manner of delightful thing. We try to keep it positive.
Nerd culture.
Yeah.
Also, innuendo, specifically your endo.
In your endo. Yes. And that's, yeah. So anyways, we got a lot of stuff we're going to talk about this week. We're going to talk about the new Vampire Survivors Ode to Castlevania DLC. We're going to talk about the Rise of the Golden Idol. We're going to talk about Mouthwashing, a couple other things. Where do we want to start?
Where do we want to start?
I'm already started. This is vodka and what is this? Sparkling lime water, which means it has basically no calories
Nice.
and no taste. But it'll get you drunk.
It'll get you drunk.
Ain't you seen my movies? All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's...
Go
ahead.
I was just saying I would join you, but again, middle of the day here is the downside.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere, Chris.
That's true.
Yeah, but not here, and I got to do the rest of the day afterwards, so...
Will, I'm curious.
Yeah.
What's the deal with mouthwashing?
Man, Mouthwashing is one of those games that I feel like you shouldn't talk about at all and should just kind of play. Also, there's a Jake back there. I don't know if you can see him. He's taking a nap.
Jake spotted.
Jake spotted. So Mouthwashing is, I think we've talked about it briefly on the show before, but Mouthwashing is a small indie game from what is the name of that studio? Hold on one second.
I'll look it up while you're talking.
No, it's Wrong Organ, and it is a psychological horror game about a group of people who are on a transport ship, and they are delivering something, and something goes horrifically wrong, and the ship crashes into an asteroid, and they have no communication. They're running out of food, running out of air. And the only thing that's on the ship is a bunch of extremely alcoholic mouthwash, which they start drinking. And it's about like them trying to survive this really weird thing. And it's weird, and it plays with time. It's non-linear. It plays with non-Euclidean space. It is... in the same way that like people are like, yeah, Silent Hill is like a journey into hell. Like Mouthwashing is a journey into hell aboard a spaceship, and it's not very long. I think it's about 3 hours, but it is really well made and extremely well written. It has like this PS1 era aesthetic that it pulls off really well, and it goes places. And Chris, have you played Mouthwashing all the way through?
I have not, no. It's on the list. I want to, though. Definitely do want to.
Yeah. I've got some stuff that I'm trying to get to before that, but because people like yourself, and I believe Thomas talked about it.
Yeah, Thomas has talked about it too.
Yeah. So it seems good. So I'm going to probably check it out.
Yeah, it's really interesting because there's some things that you learn later on that recontextualize a lot of the early scenes that is not really obvious at the time, and I kind of want to play it again knowing what I know now.
Armed with foreknowledge.
Yeah, it's... Mouthwashing is incredible, man. It is like truly one of those indie games that's like, man, this medium can actually do interesting things. It doesn't have like very crazy gameplay. Mostly you just kind of walk around and interact with things. But the way that it tells its story is really interesting, and uh, it does some really cool visual things and very cool like this is a video game things. Like at one point, one character is mad at another character, and he's like, "Oh, I've had to do this and this and this and this and this and this," and as they're talking, as he names each one, they pop up as mission objectives, just like they did when you had to go do them. And it's like it's a very like clever way of like expressing like that character's frustration in that moment. And it's man, like mouthwashing is really cool. I think it might be my game of the year.
Nice.
And like I said, it's not very long. It's maybe 3 hours. Um,
Now I'm very interested.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
it's not gonna be that long until our game of the year episode. It's
yeah,
kind of difficult for me to believe that we've already almost gotten back to it since last year's. It feels
It's
like this
the
year has
middle of
just
the
flown.
year. Why is it the middle of November?
Yeah.
yeah. It's wild. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff that I still have to play, but yeah, mouthwashing is
Yeah.
really special, and I think that it has not gotten the due that it is deserved. So,
Yeah. I feel like
um,
that's true of like almost every indie game that comes out. But
I don't know.
indie horror in particular, I feel like gets short shrift.
I think there's plenty of indie games that get their bit. Like people won't, shut up about Hades ever. Which
Yeah.
not to say that Hades is you know not deserving. I don't
Undeserving
particularly
of it,
care for
yeah.
that game,
That was also like several years ago.
but well, it's just an example, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
there
yeah.
are indie games that get their due.
Yes. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
not saying
they
that. I'm not
usually are
saying they
made by
don't.
Supergiant.
I'm saying generally they don't get enough credit. So yeah,
Yeah,
and I think that horror is just generally that way as a genre, even if it's not in the indie space. Um,
It is niche.
yeah,
Like, that's just,
look at
horror and
Alan Wake.
survival horror in general is, yeah, relatively niche.
Yeah, I was gonna say, look at
I
Alan
mean,
Wake 2's like financial performance, given how critically well received it was.
in defense, it's an Epic exclusive.
It's true.
I
It's
think
true.
that didn't help. I mean, the weird thing about that in games, right, is like in film, horror is a moneymaker.
Yeah,
It is,
A24
it's
is out there making bank.
well because they can produce them for basically next to nothing, and
Yeah.
then they
Yeah.
like there is a very dedicated, very passionate group of people who are horror fans,
Yeah.
and I am like a big horror person, and
You can film a horror movie out of your garage,
yeah,
which, and unfortunately in video games, that advantage doesn't exist. It's not like
Yeah.
horror games are cheaper to make than anything else.
Yeah, that's the
But
big difference.
I think the weirder thing is less that like that doesn't work in games, and that there doesn't seem to be as much of an overlap between people who really like horror films and really like horror games. And it's games are not as popular as a medium as film. I know everyone's like it makes more money. It's like, okay, please go compare a film's lifetime ticket sales and then its physical media or digital rentals or any of that to the sales of a video game and tell me what's bigger. It's the fucking film. But yeah, and I think like we're obviously we're bad at covering indies in general. Not us specifically at the platformers, but
I think that's something we as the platformers are actually quite good at. Yeah.
yeah, we do a lot of indie coverage here. But I think like most places in general are fairly bad at it. Most places don't have the budget to do it, or they don't have the resources, they don't have the staff. Um, and because of that, a lot of games fall through the cracks, especially games that I think a lot of people would really love. And I was reading about mouthwashing after I'd played it because I was like, man, this game is fantastic, and the developers did an AMA where they were, just answering a ton of questions because the game has apparently done quite well. And they're like, yeah, this game barely survived cancellation, and it barely, it only came together in the last few weeks. And you play it, and you're like, this game is fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
So I think it's, for me, it was nice to be reminded that games can be good. Not to be like overly negative about the industry or anything, but a lot of this stuff, like I play it and I'm just like, I've seen this so many times.
Yeah.
Mouthwashing feels very unique and very much like a game that knew what it wanted to be and did it, and is interesting and unique and like reminds me of why I enjoy this medium still. So
Yeah. Good stuff.
High praise. Good stuff.
yeah, go play Mouthwashing. It's like $15 fucking.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it is 10% off right now. It is $11.69.
Nice.
Nice.
Nice. So please go play Mouthwashing.
All right. Good stuff.
It is
Kris?
$17.05 Australian, and it is in my Steam cart for later.
Nice. I actually added a couple of things in my Steam cart. The Castlevania Dominus collection and the Castlevania Advance collection. You want to know why?
Excellent choices.
You want to know why?
I know exactly why.
Yeah. Why I've done this is because I got my whistle whetted by playing Vampire Survivors Ode to Castlevania. And I gotta say, Lucas kind of teased that there was more to.
I have mad respect for how well he played that shit close to his chest last episode.
So
because
for those
when
of you
the gates open,
yeah,
fuck me, they open.
Yeah. For the and there is some stuff that like even knowing that was coming, there is some stuff that
then it goes further again.
That I figured
and
out.
Again.
Yeah, that I figured out that is really fun and interesting and I did not expect. That was originally how obliquely can I reference this without causing issues? Anyways, for those of you who were not with us last week, Lucas White was on the episode as well, as he so often is. And he had gotten further. He had beaten Vampire Survivors Ode to Castlevania DLC, and Kris and I were still in the first kind of leg of it. So I played it a lot this week.
Same, yep.
Got all the way to credits.
And discovered that was not, in fact, the end of the game.
Yes.
It was, in fact, the tutorial.
It was basically the beginning, yeah. But it's so good. There was, I forget whether it was, I believe it was you who had said this feels like Vampire Survivors 2. But
I think I threw that out somewhere. I've definitely written it in my own notes, but I don't know if you've read any of that. So yeah, somebody's been saying that.
Yeah, I believe it was you who said that. And I will say, I completely agree. This feels like a new Vampire Survivors game all its own. And not only that, I feel like the developer took what they learned from the earlier weapons and characters and really did some interesting stuff with
absolutely
not only how the weapons work and how the passives work, but also how they interact with other things, how the evolutions work, and even sometimes the ways that you evolve things. And even introducing, light mechanical spoiler, like multi-stage characters that have like
multi-stage characters or characters that have to charge by standing still in order to get extra abilities.
Yeah.
Little things like that.
Characters that don't just have one ability, but have like 4, So yeah, it's really impressive to take this game and add a stage that is so full of fun stuff that I basically only want to play on it. Even when I'm not doing any of the unlocking for that, I just want to be there because the ability to teleport all around the castle and fight a bunch of weird looking bosses and some of the things that some of the interesting things that it does that are reminiscent of a few games in the Super Nintendo era, let's say. If you know, you know. But yeah, I am incredibly impressed with this. This is I stopped playing Vampire Survivors originally because it was like taking over my life. And it's worse now than it was before. So I'm gonna have to at some point tear myself away from it, but there is so much here and so much of it is so fun that this is definitely my like streaming or watching a movie I've already seen before game that I'm playing on Steam Deck. It runs beautifully. However, I will say, with the number of items that are on this stage, if you pick up items from leveling up and fill those up, and then get every item on the stage, and then get all that stuff evolved,
you can have so much. You can be fully decked out.
Yeah, you can get to the point where you like barely can see anything.
Oh yeah, no, the visual noise pollution is just off the fucking chain. You cannot perceive what is going on. It's just numbers and lights.
Yeah.
And the occasional beeps. I'm like, cool, I'm just going to put my Switch down for like 10 minutes and let that play out.
Did your Switch slow down at all during this?
Fuck yes, it did.
Yeah, my Steam Deck even did.
Yeah, I have more to mention on the Switch version because originally I played the game like not Ode to Castlevania. I played Vampire Survivors on PC, and then ahead of this, I'm just like, I kind of want this just, on a handheld. I don't have a Steam Deck, so I grabbed another copy on, grabbed all the DLC I hadn't gotten previously ahead of Ode to Castlevania. I've been playing through that. And and then this happened and I got that and it's like, yeah, cool. This is a good decision, especially given that, even all of it together is like $20 tops.
Yeah.
Like as much as we call this Vampire Survivors 2, Ode to Castlevania is still cheaper than the base game.
Yeah.
And it probably adds significantly more. So
yes.
Yeah.
There's a ton. But I'd only played the base game and then Tides of the Foscari, which I got and reviewed for the show, and then Ode to Castlevania, which we're reviewing for the show. But yeah, I think I reviewed the Among Us DLC as well.
You did. You talked about it here, I recall.
But I did that on Switch, so I actually don't have it on my Steam Deck version. So I need to go back and get that. And then there's some other ones as well that they did. Like
there was the Contra one was in between Among Us and Castlevania, and then the first one they did was Legacy of the Moonspell. And that was where I dropped off on the PC. I got the first DLC, had 100%ed everything at that point. Like, yeah, I'm good for a while.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really good. I have like 130 of the achievements, which the fact that you can get that many achievements and then that's like half of what there is just wild. It's wild.
Yeah, so my decision to play on the Switch has kind of come back to bite me in the sense that it is actually behind the other versions. Like there are actual issues, notable issues with it that they have addressed and said, yeah, a patch is coming for this. Hopefully within, they said within 2 weeks, which puts it at tomorrow, hopefully.
Nice.
So we'll see. But basically, when you unlock the second merchant and thereabouts, if this means anything to you whatsoever, that merchant does not show up on the Switch. And a whole bunch of other things do not happen or progress in the late game. So I've done a bunch of it, but there's a bunch more that I just cannot do.
Yeah. A
whole bunch of secrets and such I can't fulfill. So it's like, cool. That's a good time for me to just put that down and come back.
Yeah, there's also not... they get a little vague with the unlock conditions later on. And it's like,
yeah,
okay.
And some of it is very, like a lot of the secret characters and such are very much just, how much do you know Castlevania? Let's find out.
Yeah. But if you want to, here's just a quick plug for something I've done. If you want to know how to unlock all of the weapons and characters from the first 2 legs of the Ode to Castlevania DLC, you can check out my my guide on Kotaku, which went up. So I've actually been consulting my own guide as I'm going through and running and being like, okay, I found this weapon. What fuses with that? Let me just go ahead and look at this. But anyways.
Yeah, memory's not so good. There's so many weapons. I'm running like 12 at the moment. What combinations do I need?
Yeah. But anyways, yeah, Vampire Survivors continues to be great. Some of the best money you can spend, just pound for pound, I think, if you're just looking
dollars to dopamine ratio is unchanged.
Yeah, unchanged and probably unmatched. It's pretty wild. It's right up there with Balatro as like brain drug.
You found a way to mention it again, boy.
Yeah, we did.
Every episode. I don't think we've had an episode this year that hasn't mentioned Balatro, at least in passing. Just throwing that out.
Well, it's probably currently my game of the year, so we'll see how that goes. Anyways, Kris, What do you want to talk about?
Well, I can jump off that quite nicely because you mentioned the Castlevania collections, the Dominus collection and such. Because you got the itch, right?
Oh,
After playing
absolutely.
enough Vampire Survivors, you're like, yeah, Castlevania is cool. I want to go play that.
Well,
I
and
did
like
exactly
there are
the
some
same.
characters. Yeah, there are some characters in these games that I haven't played as, or there like there's whole. I haven't played every Castlevania game. I've played way more of the like Igavania Metroid style games than I have the classic platformers. So I think
Same.
I've played only Castlevania 1 and Super Castlevania 4, but I didn't beat either of them. I just played like a grip of it. And
Yeah,
so
those are. I've definitely played those. I feel like I played Bloodlines at some point. Maybe I didn't. I don't know.
but there's a lot of Castlevania games. So there's a lot of
Yeah.
stuff that I still have yet to cover. And I'd like to. So I'm excited to do more of that. Some of this is just to revisit stuff that I love, like Order of Ecclesia and the Soma Cruise games. And then other stuff is to revisit stuff that I really only touched on when I was younger, like the one with Jonathan and the young girl.
Portrait of Ruin.
Yeah,
Her name is
Portrait of
Charlotte.
Ruin. I played a tiny bit of that, but I think I was just borrowing it from a friend in high school, and I just never, did that. And then, there are some other ones like that, but I want to go back and kind of fill those gaps.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, Castlevania also, for a series that hasn't had a game in a long time and has no sign of a new one coming up soon, it sure gets around a lot because feeling the itch, and also just looking for, something to play with a bunch of friends, I ended up starting up a V Rising server again. So I hadn't done that since because it came out of early access earlier this year. We'd spoken about it a few episodes ago, well, quite a few at this point. Yeah, and it has Castlevania DLC as well. I'm just like, you know what? I could use that to make some cool shit. It just got updated to have a couple more outfits, including a Shinoa and Soma outfit in it. I'm like, yeah, I want to go and play through all the 1.0 stuff that I hadn't played yet. And so I looked over at that and thought, I don't really want to play this solo. And I pitched it to my WoW guildies and said, I'm going to set up a server. Who's in? And then like quite a few hands went up. So we have gradually been building up ridiculously labyrinthine castles and awesome looking places and beating the shit out of a whole lot of people and terrorizing the countryside. Because
Nice.
V Rising is great fun. And that's a lot of what I've been doing the last week. It's like, if not Vampire Survivors on my own, then V Rising with friends. So
Just all vampires all the
that's
time.
pretty much, yeah.
Very nice.
Like I said,
very nice.
Vampire Hunter.
Indeed. All right, Will, you're back up in the order. What you got?
I've been playing Wayfinder a little bit, the relaunch.
So
So
have
they
I. We
reworked
can
it.
talk.
Huh? What?
I also picked it up for the 1.0 relaunch thing.
What do you think,
So,
Kris? Because I'm torn on it.
also torn on it, but you have previous experience, so let's hear yours first and then I'll weigh in.
This game feels like a game that was retooled.
Which it was.
Which it was, and I'm not trying to be unfair. I think there's a lot of really great stuff about Wayfinder. Like the art is gorgeous. It has an interesting little world that you can run around in. The combat feels good. But every time I play it, I'm just kind of like, I feel like I've played this before. And not in a way that makes me excited. Maybe not like with the exact same combat system and stuff, but like it's like, oh, this is like Destiny, right? Like I go, I do some story where my character never talks, and they're basically just an avatar that comes with like a pre-built set of abilities, and I kill things and I get more stuff, and I use the stuff to kill more things and get more stuff. And occasionally I run around with my friends and kill more things and
Get more stuff.
get more stuff. And I feel like it would be a lot better if it was not a game that did that.
I kind of get you, and I feel like the story about the development of this game is more interesting than the story presented in the actual game because of how the entire thing went down. So I think I largely agree with you in the sense that I just, the moment I get in and look around and look at the menus and look at the progression systems, part of me just recoils in horror. I like just, I feel my skin crawl as I see the specific layout and go, oh no, I've been here before.
Yeah.
And again, like, what sucks is none of this, I don't want any of this to discredit the game or what Airship Syndicate has done with it, because
Yeah.
again, the story of the development is quite interesting because the original intention of it was to be an MMO light, a live service game. And all of that is visible and obvious and clear. But it launched with such problems that the feedback was not great. Like, enough people were like, yeah, the combat and such is fun, the art's really cool. I believe that was what you guys said as well.
Yeah.
At the time. And so there was, you know, a glimmer of hope there, but the server issues and such were just like unmanageable. There were a lot of problems, and the whole future of the game was kind of uncertain because the publisher just pulled the plug on Airship Syndicate entirely. It's like, nah, we're leaving, we're bailing. So what's I find most commendable then is that Airship Syndicate went, all right, we'll retool it and we'll do it ourselves. And so the management took pay cuts. They invested their own money into the project because they believed in it and wanted it to succeed.
Yeah.
You know, it's like more about the actual creative vision of what they're creating than any kind of money. And I'm like, okay, you immediately have my respect for that. Awesome. And now the game is no longer a live service. It is no longer an MMO light. It is built more like an offline action RPG game with optional co-op that you can just get, you know, pull your buddies into and beat things up. And I think that's a better approach in general. The problem is still that a lot of the design elements of the live service stuff are still there, at least on face value. They are tuned and such that you can just get it all basically in a single run through, but you can see it, you can feel it, the menus drip with it, and there's something about it that just makes me go like, I have over 1,000 hours in Warframe. I don't need to do it again.
Yeah.
Even though I'm not doing it again. It's such a weird feeling.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because Airship Syndicate is responsible for one of my favorite turn-based RPGs in the past
Battle Chasers?
decade or so. Yeah, Battle Chasers Night War, which I thought was actually really good.
Yeah, I agree. I kickstarted that and I'm glad I did.
Yeah, that was I think my favorite turn-based, like my favorite new turn-based RPG until Sea of Stars, probably, as far as like just pure mechanics. And I still think that like the art, like Joe Madureira is an incredible artist. Like I just love his style. Like Darksiders, like all that sort of stuff is just, it's great.
Yeah,
It's
Joe Mad does good art.
The design is very crunchy, and that goes a long way for me. And the combat does too. And Will and I had a blast when we played it at PAX during that preview event. And I was excited to play more. It's what I had hoped for, which I know the game wasn't designed to be that, but I think like kind of the platonic ideal of what it would have been for me is like take Battle Chasers, make it multiplayer, and just kind of like blow it up into a 3D space. Like still be linear, but go through it, be able to do, you know, drop in, drop out. Because you can do that with some of the Final Fantasy games. Like you can do co-op and stuff like that. Which I know isn't the same when it's like an action game as when it's a turn-based game, but
well, the Tales of series is known for that as well, even in the early days. You just plug in a second controller and somebody takes control of a party member.
Yeah. It is unfortunate that I am super grateful and mad props to them for doing that pivot, because I know that there's discussions in the UK right now about requiring developers to make stuff available offline so that things like Concord don't happen, where somebody buys a game and then within 2 weeks it's just gone. And I
shout out to the Stop Killing Games project as well for basically getting that under wraps.
Yeah, which they actually reached out to me, so I may end up talking to them about that, but we'll see. but yeah, so I have a lot of respect for that, and I have even more respect for the fact that the Airship Syndicate put their money where their mouth is on doing that conversion. But it sucks that they had to, and
Yeah.
it's publishers bailing and leaving the developers with the bag, like holding the bag is just. I mean, this is we on Blue Sky, we were passing around Luke Plunkett's new piece on freelance budgets and stuff like that, which is very like inside baseball for this podcast. But it's just the trends in the industry are going this way. Like people are trying to make super hits. When they don't make that, they just want to shutter things. They want to cancel projects. They want to pull it off the shelf. They want to have it as a tax write off. It sucks. And seeing it's not that I didn't believe in the original vision of it. It's just like, man, it stinks that they not only were they not able to make the MMO that they wanted to make up to the level that they wanted to make it, but when trying to pivot, because they're covering the pay themselves, they couldn't convert it into something that fully stands on its own in that way either.
And I have to wonder how much of what is here was in the original design and how much of it was like, was it a publisher push to make it a live service and then they had to develop it and then push back? Or was it always intended to be that way? And then they're just kind of gone, well, this is what we can manage. I don't know, and I'd be interested to find out.
I think the thing that gets me is it does feel like an MMO that was converted.
Yeah.
Like you see it when you play. You walk around in like, the first major city and it feels empty. It feels like it was built for a bunch more people that are there.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, yeah. And the way you interact with people and the way you get quests and the way quests reward loot and the way the quests reward experience and all this stuff just feels like, yeah, this was supposed to be a particular kind of game and it's not anymore. And it feels really weird as a result.
The weirdest part for me is like the multiple currency thing.
Yeah, it feels like they tried to save it, and it was, which Airship Syndicate is a really talented studio, and I don't want to like come off on a very negative on the game because I think if you have friends who will play it with you, you're gonna have a lot of fun because I think the combat's cool. But
and I like the dungeons are bite sized and they're fun to do stuff in.
Yeah,
the classes are cool.
I'm coming across negative because it just feels weird and I want to get to the bottom of it. But at the core of it, what I have played, despite that feeling of going, "Ooh, this was something else once upon a time," and seeing all the trappings of former MMO and even just a sense of, oh, this almost feels like I'm not going to say the game itself feels like a mobile game, but a lot of the ways the currencies are laid out and the progression is just makes me go, oh yeah, this is every mobile game. Even though, it ends up unfolding a bit more than that. But it's just, I felt that and I, immediately got the brain whirring and everything like that. But when I'm sitting down and playing it, it's a good time. It's pretty. It's fun. I like it. I can't say it's a bad game. It's just an odd game. But it's also cheap. It is relatively cheap. It is genuinely good fun to play. And I don't regret picking it up if only to support, Airship Syndicate and everything like that. And I'm having a good time with it. I would like to play more of it, but it's just such an interesting situation.
Yeah, I think my thing is so far I've mostly played it by myself, and I think I'd be having a lot more fun if I was playing it with other people.
Hit me up. I think I'm the same, so we should definitely co-op it.
Yeah, I'll play with you guys.
Hell
but
yeah.
so far, I guess just the type of game that this started out with, to me, is the kind of game that I don't want to play. Like I'm not gonna lie, I do not want to play live service games. I don't want to play like looter games. I don't want to do any of that stuff. I do not find it interesting. I do not find it fun. I think it is a dopamine treadmill. I don't need it in my life. And what's a shame about that to me is that there's a lot of things about Wayfinder that are really well designed. And yet every time I look at it, I just get this, to what Kris said, just like incredible sense of revulsion of like, oh God, this, right? And I don't want to do that, which is unfair to the game. But
call back to the Skinner box piece you wrote.
Yeah, that I wrote.
100% that. Yeah, that's always in the back of my mind now. As a result, like, ugh.
Yeah, and I like I have spent most of my time in this business like trying to avoid Skinner boxes at all cost. And I wish this had just started off as like a fun little 4-player game where you had like actual dialogue with the NPCs. But it's not that. And so I think it depends on like how much you're willing to A, do you have friends, and B, like what are you willing to put up with to get to the good stuff. I think the good stuff is worth getting to. It just there's a better world where like this and Anthem and games like that like were something else. And everybody was not chasing the
100%.
magical live service unicorn that no longer exists really, except for like 4 games, and even those it doesn't really exist for anymore.
It's arguable that it ever existed in the first place. These games happen to make a lot of money despite themselves in a lot of ways.
Mhm.
Like, just right time, right place, right situation, and
Yeah,
went on from there.
and there's
But
only ever like 1 or 2, right, in that genre.
yeah,
Right? It's never like, oh, there's 8 of these, but everyone for some reason, even though we already have like the 1 and 2, is like we'll be number 3, and you won't.
oh, you will, but number 3 is number 3 by a distinct margin.
Yeah.
And the smartest thing Cliff Bleszinski ever said was about, there can only ever be 1, maybe 2 in any given niche. And 1,000% correct on that. Like, MOBAs. You got League of Legends and you got Dota. There is no space for anything else.
Yeah.
You have games like Smite and Heroes of the Storm that'll give it a shot, and they'll do okay for themselves. They'll build up a little niche, but they're always going to be third, and third by a long margin. MMOs. World of Warcraft. Final Fantasy XIV crept up there. You got so many other MMOs came and went during that time trying to ape that success, and some of them hold on, some of them, have carved out, again, their own niche. Like you got your Guild Wars 2, your SWTOR, all the rest. They're there, but they're third by a long margin.
Yeah,
Rinse,
or
repeat
they're
through
like,
pretty much every genre.
or they're really weird, like very niche things. Like the best thing that comes to mind for me is like that one MMO where you have a ship and you're in space, and
Eve.
Eve, yes, Eve Online, right? Eve Online
Yeah.
is
The
bizarre
crazy
and
one.
weird,
Yeah.
and its own thing, like completely and totally its own thing. So like
Yes.
Eve, yeah, Eve can carve out a space for itself, but everything else, like
But by the same logic, it is technically an MMORPG. It technically exists in that same space, but it's such its own thing that it is its own number 1 in its own little niche, and there might be a number 2 or 3 somewhere for that as well. It just either hasn't existed yet or died a long time ago and it didn't even get to a number 2 spot.
yeah. So it's kind of how I feel about Wayfinder. I think it's worth checking out. I think Airship Syndicate is a good studio and they're worth supporting. But
they are the number 3 to Warframe and Destiny in this case, even though they tried to pivot away from that.
So I guess my thought process is, man, I wish this game was something else. I wish it was just the parts that I liked.
Yeah.
And not the parts that are, clearly a holdover from a game. Who knows? I don't know if that was the game they wanted to make initially, or if that was just kind of the way that things shook out. So
yeah, I don't know.
I hope they get to make a next game, and I hope it's what they want, and I hope they don't get fucked over again.
Yeah.
And I hope eventually whatever publisher deals with Airship Syndicate, if any, just does not chase the mythical $1 billion live service like so many are, because it's destroying the industry.
That way lies
rapidly.
madness.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
but it's the way of capitalism, right? It's not, we're going to spend, 500, or we're going to spend $50 million to make 200 million back. Yeah. They're like, okay, but what if we spend 200 million to make $1 billion?
It's like, well,
and then
it's great work
after that, it's like, what if we spend $1 billion to make 10 billion? It's like, great. You have to get there first.
What if you could buy more money?
What if?
Yeah,
and Bitcoin was invented.
Yeah.
It's crazy that like everybody thinks this is going to be different for them. But it's I don't know.
I think it's just they're not even thinking that. They're just looking at trends and going, yeah, cool. They're not actually playing games. They're not developing games. They're just suits.
Cue the Arrested Development meme. Does that work for people? No. They delude themselves into thinking that it'll work for them, but no. But for us, maybe it could work.
And there it is.
It's literally that, and
Yeah.
it's
Video games
crazy.
should not be a speculative market. This is an art form.
It arrived too late into capitalism. It didn't have the time to develop into an actual art form like every other creative medium did. It doesn't have the long history of, written and visual art. It doesn't have an extra century of lead on, movies and TV and such like that. Games came in too late, and as such, they are only ever viewed as products. There is art among games, a lot of really, really good art. There are people using it like an art form and making amazing stories in games that really explore that concept. But that was never the core of it, because there was a bunch of programmers in the 80s and such stumbling onto it and going, all right, money though.
Yeah.
And then the publisher came in, it was too late. We are too late into the capitalism. So all the more reason for us to keep going for the indie stuff,
Yeah, I don't even think it's that, to be honest. I mean, that helps, right? But I think
Sure.
If you look at like every other medium, they also had that moment where a bunch of really, really, really talented people were like, fuck this, we're going to do it differently.
Mm-hmm.
And they managed to do it in a way that like was financially successful. Like you look at like film in the 70s, right? Like American film in the 70s is one. Like the way that books have changed over time, like modernism, postmodernism. And games have never carved out that space for themselves because, and I've talked about this before, but like games are the only medium of art where they're designed to be replaced. They're not designed to last. They're designed to be replaced. This Mario game is designed to be replaced by the next Mario game. This Madden is designed to be replaced by the next Madden. This live service game is designed to be replaced by the next live service game from the same studio. None of this stuff is meant to last. It is meant to make as much money as possible over the course of its life and then be replaced. And
I think that's definitely true to an extent. And I feel like certainly when you're talking about these like iterative yearly sports franchises, that's definitely the case. I feel like the best games don't do that though. I don't know how you
Sure.
I feel
like if you're looking at a narrative
I
focused
agree.
games, yeah. Like Hades 2
agree
isn't
that-
replacing Hades 1. It's a different story. It's a different,
That's true.
Sure, but
for many companies, that is not the case. They are
Yeah.
made as products and meant to be replaced. And even in the early days before, it got really bogged down on publishers, because it was started more by, programmers and hobbyists and such like that.
Yeah, but
There wasn't necessarily the artistic vision behind it. It had it. Certainly there are some among it, but
and I think there is a degree to which you're right, Will, even on like a systemic level. Like apart from the PC platform, like even just mechanically, these things are designed to be replaced.
mm-hmm.
Like the consoles that you're going to play, like there's no, there's no platform that has universal backwards compatibility. And until that becomes true, like that's, which is that.
And as multiple generations happen and PC emulation continues, that's just where we're all going to end up.
Yeah.
And we're kind of hitting that point this console generation, because this console generation is laughably unnecessary.
Yeah.
Aside from
I look at these
the
machines
Switch,
and I'm like, why do I own this?
PS4, but more. Yeah.
I haven't bought a current console. I have a Switch because that's got its own, identity and branding, and Nintendo's going to do what Nintendo does. But I never ended up buying a PS5. I never bought an Xbox, and well, I feel justified in having done so, because guess what? Most of the game, I'm only missing a handful of games, and none so radically awe-inspiring that I absolutely must go and secure them. And those that are, they're on PC after a year or two anyway.
Yeah.
If not at launch.
Anyway, sorry to cut you off, Will. I definitely want to hear more of your point.
No, I just think like it's it's all those things. Like it's Chris's point about capitalism. It's the point about like you can get a video camera and a few $1,000s and go make a film, right? And make like a really good film. All you need is somebody to write a script and like decent actors, right? And this is happening.
Yeah.
You can't do that with games, really. Even the indie space, right? And then we have the problem of like, I think the thing that nobody really wants to talk about. This is a niche medium. We have fooled ourselves for a really long time into thinking that this is a mainstream. Like I'm talking about like the kinds of people who play video games on consoles, not games on your phone, right? Like there is a distinction here.
Yeah, there's a ubiquity to mobile gaming.
Yeah,
that
but
is
that's
not
like saying
present
that
elsewhere.
But like saying like games are everywhere and everyone plays games is like saying that everybody watches movies because they're on TikTok. It's not the same fucking thing. And that's not to be disrespectful to mobile games. Like there's plenty of good small bite-sized games out there that are really
Cut the
well
road,
designed.
baby.
But this is a niche medium in the AAA space, and frankly the indie space by and large. It does not cross over outside of its audience. It is the same people. Those people spend a lot of money on this hobby. It's the American comic book industry, writ large. That's what it is. It's the same people buying a bunch of things, getting older. Nobody is coming to replace them. And now everybody who's really into this medium wants to work in this medium and make stuff. And the reality is like, that's great. Please follow your dream. But there is not enough money. There just isn't enough money because there's not enough of an audience. Most people do not care about video games at all. And we have let budgets. We've fooled ourselves because the industry makes so much money because a small portion spends so much that like it's like, oh, we're a big medium. We can spend all this money, and like maybe if you're Rockstar,
yeah, if you make GTA 5, sure.
Yeah,
that's
maybe
it.
If you're Rockstar.
Not every game is going to be GTA 5. In fact, all but GTA 5 are not going to be GTA 5.
GTA 5, yeah, and everybody else is like, oh, well, we can just keep ratcheting up the budgets and making everything look better, and we'll charge $1,000 for a console, and it's like, who do you think is going to pay for this? Nobody is going to pay for this. It is going to be
the line must go up.
The line must go up, and the reality is, it's the American comic book industry, and if you know what the American comic book industry is right now, it's collapsing. It is being maintained by, again, the same people who are getting older. New people are not getting into it. And they're making money by raising prices and producing fewer books. It is the same fucking thing. And it will continue to be that way until we figure out, like, hey, at some point, there has to be enough. You know, we've chased the graphical unicorn for 20 years. It doesn't work. The audience doesn't care.
And we've hit the diminishing returns point like at least a generation or two ago.
Yeah, everything now is just a better Xbox 360.
Look at these side-by-side pictures of PS5 and PS5 Pro. I defy you to tell me the difference.
Look at the remaster difference between Horizon and Horizon.
When like The Last of Us, they were like, look at the way the remaster looks. I'm like, I legitimately can't tell the difference.
Yeah.
Like, the lighting is slightly different. I can't even tell you if it's better. It's just different.
Yeah. We were always going to hit the law of diminishing returns. Like, that's just how things are. But the jump from NES to Super NES, huge. The jump from, like, that generation to N64
Super NES to PS1 to PS2.
Crazy.
Bigger,
to PS2,
bigger.
Crazy. Like, you know, every time we would be like, oh man, it's like that line from Futurama. It's this type of TV. It's got better resolution than the real world. You know.
And I think someone pointed this out several years ago, and I wish I could remember who it was so I could give them credit for this concept. But the thing is, if we're being very honest, right? Like, the reason that those console jumps felt like they were a big deal was not because the visuals got better. It's because the types of games that got made changed.
Yeah.
Games went into 3D. We got new genres.
Yeah.
Like, the genres that were around changed fundamentally. I mean, you can literally track, like, the first-person shooter before Halo and after.
Yeah.
Yep.
The first-person shooter before Call of Duty 4 and after. Before GoldenEye and after.
Yeah.
Like, these games, you know, that's just one genre, right? You look at, like, 2D games that went 3D, like Mario and Sonic and Metroid and stuff like that. And then you look at like games where technology allows you to do more stuff,
Yeah.
like in RTSs, right? Where the ability to have better tech allows you to do so much more with the systems in the game. And somewhere along the line, we stopped doing that.
Yeah.
And we
Well,
stopped doing like,
yeah. There's only so many dimensions you can expand. Like there's a really good example. Even if you just want to stick with one franchise, you can go from Mario 1 to Mario World to Mario 64. And it's like, okay, it's a 2D platformer. Okay, now it's a matter of scale. It's a 2D platformer where we can have a lot of different things that are being kept track of, like keys and doors and multiple pathways that go multiple places. And there's a lot of vertical space that we can explore and all that sort of stuff. And then it's like, okay, now we've got a whole third dimension in this one. And we've got different areas. We've got like secrets that are hidden in ways that we couldn't do before. You know, there's new like visual things that you can do, like when you have, you know, the underwater segment in Mario 64, we have the eel coming at you. Like that was totally new, you know. Or well, maybe not totally new if you want to count like Mode 7, like Star Fox stuff, but
yeah. My point is, I mean, you're right, but my point is less about like, you know, in specific instances and more along the lines of like when the technology changed, the types of games that used to be made changed.
yeah.
And now we don't do that anymore. We make
We are
the
still
same
making the same
games,
game. Yeah.
and they're just bigger and prettier. And there's no functional like way of rethinking the way that genres work or the way that games work. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want to be that guy, but like GTA 3 was 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago. Why are open world games still designed that way?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's only a handful that aren't.
And
And
on
then
the other
everyone
side,
starts copying them.
and on the other side of things, like piggybacking on what Will was saying, a lot of the games that are reinventing or innovating um, don't need the modern hardware to exist. These are genres that could have existed or games that could have existed on the PS2.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's more about like playing with the box now. You've got your inscriptions and Doki Doki Literature Club and these different things. Like they're conceptual.
Fuck,
Yeah.
UFO 50 this year is an
Yeah.
example of that as well.
Yeah.
These are games that in many ways could have been developed in the 80s with just a few little hints that they could not have. But a lot of it was just a case of, why didn't we design it that way? We hadn't gotten that. We hadn't experimented with it yet. And some of the best games in the UFO 50 collection are just exactly that. They're just, what if we did these really fucking cool things in a style of retro that no one else did at the time? And some of them are great. Like, that's a game I need to get back to properly. And I haven't talked about it yet here, but
Yeah.
there's a segue for you.
Unfortunately, this is another symptom of what we were talking about earlier, which is the state of the space and the influence of capitalism on it, because this is risk aversion.
Yep.
If you know something sold, why? I mean, it's the classic like, why reinvent the wheel if it's not broke? Don't fix it. Except it's with art, like, which is really disappointing. You know, you
Don't
get,
reinvent the wheel, just sell you the same wheel, but it's shinier.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the issue again is, you know, like if you look at the games that have been really exciting in the last few years, like I go back to Outer Wilds a lot, but like Outer Wilds was a student project, right? And the exciting stuff is not coming from like big studios anymore. In fact, I really don't know anybody who looks at any big studio, right? And is like, I'm excited for their next project. I don't know a single person. Maybe id.
I would say what
Right?
what Remedy does to an extent.
Yeah, I think Remedy,
And
but
Remedy is
not a big
also
studio.
arguably, indie in their own way.
Yeah, Remedy is not a big studio, right?
Not big. Yeah, it's a sliding scale, but yeah.
They're extremely good at what they do, but they are not like huge. They are not.
I wasn't trying to derail the whole discussion. Sorry.
That's all good, but you get what I mean.
Yeah,
it's not. They aren't your EAs. They aren't your Ubisoft.
They're not. That's not Treyarch or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like the interesting stuff is coming from those small studios. And again, like if you are really interested in like, because 20 years ago it was very much like I'm interested in the work of this studio, right? And now I think that's not even the conversation we have anymore. I think it's with a couple of exceptions. I think it is one of them. I think
Kojima Productions, I think probably.
Yeah, Kojima Productions, absolutely. I think,
Yeah.
but nobody is excited for like what Capcom is doing anymore because they're Capcom. They're excited about what Capcom does because they want to play Monster Hunter.
Yeah.
Yeah, or we recognize this existing name.
Yeah.
You know, like
I want to play
Dragon's
Monster
Dogma.
Hunter. Yeah, I want to play Dragon's Dogma. But like you look at like the reaction to like Itsuno leaving and starting his own studio, people are excited for that because they recognize that's a really talented game designer, and worked on a ton of really well-known, really incredible games. And I think like the larger issue is that they have become so corporate. And I didn't even realize this until I started talking about it. Like they've become so corporatized, and these teams have become so big and so monolithic that like, if you asked me 10 years ago, 15 years ago, like who are your favorite developers, I could have given you a list. Today, I'm like, I don't really have any.
Yeah, I'd be like Lucas Pope.
Yeah, and if I did, it would be individual people, right, or small teams.
To an extent,
for me, it's Supergiant Games. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Supergiant Games is like 20 people, and I can name the core of them. So.
Oh, what is it? Greg Kasavin.
Emir Rao, Logan Cunningham, Gen Z. Very unfortunate name as time has gone on. Darren Korb, etc., etc.
I mean, Darren Korb, yes, absolutely, but also for music and also for acting and stuff like that. Yeah, it definitely has become a lot more focused. I mean, you were talking about Outer Wilds being a student project. So was Portal, which was one of the most exciting games that came out in that era. And but anyways, it's, I don't want to get too bogged down in that because this is a conversation that we have a lot. But it's a lot of our issues are just different manifestations of the same root problem, which is unfortunate.
The money is not innovating. The money is just trying to make more money.
Yeah.
Yep. And what are you going to do about it? So I don't know. I don't think there's an answer. I think we're legitimately in an era of decline.
I mean, the answer is follow artists that speak to you and support them. That's really all we can do. But
like the AAA space is dying. It's gonna be a long, slow death. It's not gonna mean there's gonna be no AAA games, but like
they're just gonna be the same old games you've already played.
Yeah, like this is the end of the end of a dying thing, right? And like there's so much money tied up in it that it'll last for a while. But like it is dying.
And it's all the more reason that you see more and more studios are rapidly trying to unionize, because things like, Firewalk from, who did Concord are now dead. They made their game at Sony's behest or whatever. It didn't take off. There was way too much money in it. They are now dead. As, tax write-offs, budget costs, whatever. I'm sure there is plenty of skilled people on that team who, the team no longer exists or whatever. They're going to have to go different places, find new jobs, all the rest.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just going to keep seeing that happening. Big attempts with big money, and it's not going to go as large as they want it to. And we've been saying that for like pretty much any time Square Enix opens their mouth, they're just like, the latest thing did not meet expectations. And they've been doing that pretty much since Square and Enix fused.
Yeah. So I don't have anything else on this. I just think, like spend your time on indies.
Yeah.
Spend your time on small studios, spend your time on interesting projects. And honestly, like maybe play fewer video games, realistically. Like there's a lot of great art out there. Video games are not the be all end all of art. They are just one thing. And
they are just one thing, and we should experience more if we can.
Yeah, and especially if you want to be like well-rounded and be able to talk about like what makes a medium good or what makes like design choices good or what makes writing good or whatever. Like the worst thing you can do is just play video games, especially in an era where video games are not creative.
Yeah, I was gonna say derivative, but yes.
I mean, well, because there's no incentive to be, right?
Yeah. But yeah, you're definitely, and if you are watching this or listening to this for the first time, we spend a lot of time doing that. My primary focus on this show is to cover interesting indie games. That is the thing that speaks to me the most in this business, because that's where you see the most interesting stuff. We're going to highlight a lot of indie games on our Game of the Year episode in January, and I'm going to talk about another indie game shortly. But God, what was I going to say?
TLDR, support your indies.
Yeah, support your indies. Oh! I remember what I was going to say. Yeah, so to second and sign off on what Will was saying, being well-rounded is really important, but it's not just important for us as critics. It also gives you perspective. And Will is a very well-read person. I've read a lot and done a lot and things like that, and it helps because you'll be playing something and it'll scratch something in your mind that's like, oh, that reminds me of I don't know, Cask of Amontillado or something. I don't know. Just name something. But it'll let you know, and that'll help you hone in on the things that you like, which will help you find more things that you like. Being able to see those patterns is really helpful. And also, I have just found personally that the old adage of variety is the spice of life is absolutely true. I find myself the most gratified when I am spending time in the outdoors, enjoying nature, and enjoying watching a good baseball game, and spending time with my family, and playing games, and reading books, and watching films, and going to watch plays at my local theater and things like that. Like when you have a lot of those things going, I don't know. It's a good life. So there was a time when all I did was play games all the time, and I'm definitely a lot more edified now.
So. Yeah, and it's a good thing. Yeah. It's a good thing to not just play games, and it is a good thing to be very discerning with the games you play. That does, and like I have been accused more times than I can count of being an elitist. I am not an elitist, but my time on this earth is limited. And I don't want to spend it doing the same things over and over and over again, especially if the only thing I'm getting out of it is this is the same experience you've had, it just looks prettier. Like,
not good enough.
Too much. There's too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll play a game like Vampire Survivors and, have good fun or whatever like that. But ultimately, it's not the kind of thing that carries me forward as a person. It's not what I'm ultimately. It's why when we get to the Game of the Year discussion, like Balatro is going to be in contention, but at the same time, it's also not for me because I'm just like, yeah, this game is great, but it doesn't have anything to say. And that's fine. It does what it wants to do really well, but it needs to be more meaningful to actually get that top seat for me in most ways. And it's been like that for at least a few years.
On Will's point of our time on this earth is limited, I'm going to do a quick dip into Audrey's book corner to shout out a book that I read, I want to say last year, that I may have mentioned on the show just because I typically just
We did a whole episode about it. I know exactly.
Oh, we did. Okay. So 4,000 Weeks, Time Management for Mortals by Oliver Burkeman. Great book.
Yeah. Previous episode titled Memento Mori. Go look it up. It was one of the better ones we did.
Yes.
It was the three of us again being very, very real like we are today. So
yeah. It you are going to die, and there is a lot to be gained from saying no to things and focusing on the things that are absolutely essential for you and that are the most desirable for you, and then learning to say no to stuff that is tempting but that is going to not take you closer to your kind of ideal.
Yeah, I knowing that you are going to die. And people are going to find this morbid. I think you can find it freeing. It just depends on how you look at it. Knowing that your time is limited and you are going to die, and actively thinking about that and being like, hey, how do I want to spend my time? Because I don't get more of it. It is the one thing they're not making more of.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't know. The next time I see a lot of people in this space looking for ways to occupy themselves. Right? I want a game that'll keep me occupied for a long time. And that is not living. You should not be wanting to be occupied. There is too much out there to be wanting to be occupied, to be wanting to keep you do something that will keep you busy, to be excited about something because it is long. I'm not saying long things are not worth your time, but what I am saying is that if the appeal of something to you is that it will take you a long time and you want something to occupy your time, you are not thinking about your time properly.
Yeah.
You are going to die. Read more fucking books.
And this is the difference between being a pessimistic nihilist and an optimistic nihilist. Difference between nothing matters and nothing matters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also
Be the latter.
a quote that I have. Oh wait, what was that, Will?
Be the latter.
Yes.
Be the latter.
Yes.
Absolutely be the latter.
There's a notebook that I have that has it's like an all black moleskin, and I wrote in pencil on it so that you can't see it unless you look at it at a certain angle. But it was a phrase that someone told me that changed the way that I think about things. And it made it easier for me to work on my novel. It made it easier for me to write my songs and different things like that. And the phrase is, no one cares. You are free.
I respect it.
Yeah. Nobody cares. So do what you must do. There's no one there to push you into it. There's no one there to pull you towards what you could be doing. You have to do it yourself.
Yep.
If there's something
Be
that
who you choose to be, not who the AAAs want to sell you the product for.
Yeah.
And for the love of God, like, I guess this goes into part of it, but like, don't make these things your life. Like, fandom has gotten to a really scary place, I think, if you look at it, where people define their personalities by the things that they like. Liking, I'm gonna say this very loud and clear. Liking things is not a personality.
Yeah. And neither is hating things.
No, liking things and hating things and having opinions about things is not a fucking personality. And there are people who build their entire lives around the media they consume and the things they like and all that and what they support and who they support. And it's, I don't know. I'm feeling, I guess, a little bit more philosophical today because it doesn't seem like very much matters in the grand scheme of things in this space, given, you know, what's going on in the world. But if it is going to matter, like, for fuck's sake, pick something that matters. Like, there is stuff, but you got to be discerning. You can't just live through it on autopilot.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. And I think we're also probably a little bit more reflective and philosophical because of what happened between the last episode and this one, which is the American election, which we're not going to get into because that would be a whole other episode.
Too long, too much, too outside the wheelhouse of this podcast, and we're going to be feeling the effects of it for the next few years anyway, so deal with it as it comes.
Yeah, there'll be time.
But yeah, I think, you know, if I could leave the people who listen to this with like one message over the course of this between now and the next one, or now and whatever the next thing is, like, be really, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, be really cognizant of how you spend your time.
Yeah.
And what you devote it to. and the people you devoted to and the things that you devoted to, and remember that most of those things are just things. And
Yeah.
when you
Be
lose them,
deliberate.
yeah, you won't really notice, and they won't make you happy because they never really did. So I don't know. Find the stuff that makes you happy. Support that.
Yeah. And you won't miss the other stuff when it's gone.
Yep.
Absolutely.
All right. I kind of want to end the show right there.
I'm good with that unless somebody has something they want to talk about.
I have stuff, but we can cover it next time.
There's always things I can talk about, but like that was a good one. I think that's a good point to just go, you know what? We hit a point.
Yeah.
We went off on a tangent. We got deep and philosophical again. Let's just let it sit there.
Yeah. Yeah.
The takeaway I have to say is that Wayfinder's all right, guys.
Yeah.
But I wish it was better.
And I'll just say, as somebody who's only dipped into this for a little bit earlier today, Rise of the Golden Idol is good. So check that out.
I expect that from that pedigree.
Yeah. But anyways, all right, let's get out of here. Thank you all for joining us for episode 329 of The Platformers. If you want to find us, you can now find me primarily on Blue Sky at Brian Barnett, BrianBarnett, or on Twitter, fading into the background at Ribnax, Ribnax. And if you want to see the stuff that I'm doing, you can check out a lot of my guides on Kotaku. Like I said, I've got a Vampire Survivors character unlock and weapon evolution guide up there. I've also written build guides for leveling guides and starter end game guides for every class in Diablo 4 Vessel of Hatred. And I have guides on how to unlock all of the end game stuff from Vessel of Hatred, a good deal of which is not really explained at all. As well as some stuff that, if you've not played in a while, has been changed in a few of the recent updates. So yeah, there's that. I also wrote a guide for how to play Dizzy in Guilty Gear that is also up on Kotaku. It was gonna be longer, but then it kind of got cut short. So not everything I wanted to be in there is there, but it'll still give you all the little pieces that you need to kind of get started and start poking around and run your game plan. She's very, very fun. She's one of my favorite characters that they've introduced in one of my favorite fighting games ever. So there you go. That's where you can find me.
Good stuff. Hi, I'm Kris Cornelisse. You can find me at my website of versusthebacklog.com. That's vsthebacklog.com, one word. Previous stuff I've written up there was a Diablo 4 Vessel of Hatred impressions. There's still a Deadlock thing coming real soon. I had to rewrite it because they keep changing everything, so I keep changing it. You know how it goes. On the way past, I'm going to do one quick shout out because I didn't touch on it during the actual thing. I saw a concert this weekend by a group called Heilung, which is worth checking out. That's Heilung. They're a German group, and it was half concert, half druidic ritual. It was fucking awesome. And I just had to shout that out at the end. So check them out. How about you, Will?
You can find me increasingly on Blue Sky at Edgar Allan Bro. If you'd like to see I'm still on Twitter for now. I don't know how long that's going to be true. At by Will Burger. It's Burger with an O, not a U. If you'd like to see the most recent things I wrote, I reviewed Metal Slug Tactics over at Shack News, and I reviewed the Zombies mode for Call of Duty Black Ops 6, which I think actually has some interesting things in it. Both games that I would recommend checking out. And if you want my full thoughts, you can read those reviews. But that's about it.
Cool. All right, guys, let's get out of here. If you want to check out the show, we stream it generally every week at usually at Monday, or usually on Monday at twitch.tv/Ribnax. And I put it up on youtube.com/@Ribnax for the VODs. We love to talk to you guys. We love to hear what you think. So hit us up. And yeah. That was a good one. It's nice to talk to
It
you
was.
guys again.
Always a pleasure, gents.
Oh, from everybody here at the Platformers, we hope you have a wonderful week and stay safe out there. Because until next time, we're out.
Goodbye.
Peace.